It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Welcome back on a wonderful Wednesday here on the Treasure Coast, and we continue with the Meet Your Candidate series. The first hour, we had Laura Giobbi, and for the second hour, I have a repeat, probably one of my most repeated guests, Troy McDonald, who is running for the City of Stuart Commission as an incumbent, of course. I think you were first elected in 2012.
First elected in 2011. I served through 2018. And then I took a sabbatical from politics for a couple of years, and then got back in 2020, and so here I am.
Troy is a wealth of information. I'm really looking forward to this hour. We had his opponent Sean Reed in a couple weeks ago. We talked a lot about some issues that we want to follow up with you on, so we're going to do that. But before we do, I do want to thank my sponsors: Indiantown Marine Center. Affordability, availability, no gate fees, no markups, no wait for a haul out, and also Indiantown Marina. You have safe hurricane storage at both of these facilities. They're located inland on the Okeechobee Waterway. Give either of these facilities a call. Indiantown Marina and Indiantown Marine Center. Indiantown Marine Center, by the way, can handle the really, really, really big yachts. Indiantown Marina Marina can handle pretty much anything else. So between the two of them, you are covered, but I will suggest we're in hurricane season. Reserve a place today, because once a hurricane storm is named, chances are you will not be able to find a place to keep your boat in town, because people are doing reservations beginning in January. Indiantown Marina, 772-597-2457, and Indiantown Marine Center, 772-597-0800. Okay, Troy McDonald, let's get down to it.
Just one quick thing on your sponsors. Those two facilities out in Indiantown, due to the Okeechobee Waterway, are actually becoming some of the major economic drivers in our county, and I think they're going to continue to do that, which will increase our ability to have higher paying jobs. So it's really fantastic. I'm really happy to see them sponsoring your show. So,
Troy, I'm glad you said that too, and in particular, Indiantown Marine Center is going through a huge expansion, and they're even talking about possibly working with the charter school right across the street for marine training. So there's going to be a lot of exciting things coming, and you're right, those jobs are very good paying.
Those jobs, and they're very good paying, and it's actually what we're seeing is that they have better facilities and will have better facilities and potential better facilities than any place in the state. And it's also a great place to work for the boats to be worked on. They can have a workforce that can afford to live there with Indiantown. So really, I'm very excited about those businesses. And they're not in Stuart, but they actually help Stuart out. They accent everything that we do because Stuart is so focused on maritime. So.
Stuart is, and let's get right to it. One of the major infrastructure issues in Stuart that affects the Indiantown marinas is the bridge, the train bridge.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. There is a lot going on. Actually, I spent the last 2 days dealing with the bridge.
Oh, fantastic.
And so spent quite a bit of time actually speaking with General Counsel from Florida East Coast Railroad. So just a couple of quick things. The city of Stuart acquired a mega grant from the federal government for $130,500,000 to help replace the bridge. Something I did not know until the other day is that last barge strike of the bridge came with just from a few feet of taking the bridge completely out.
Oh my goodness!
And
it's very narrow through there. It happens a lot with the larger.
Yeah, it's not just that
barges.
It's narrow. So the opening for the railroad bridge, and I'm probably going to get this wrong because I can never remember if it's 45 or 50 feet. It doesn't really matter, it's very narrow. Oh, and the channel does not actually. The channel for the three different bridges don't line up with each other, and so they're having to do like little S turn through the bridges. at the same time as the way the railroad bridge is aligned with the channel, it causes that the bridges are going with a cross current during when the tide is moving hard. So, and that's it pushes them out of their lane. And with that 45 or 50 foot wide bridge, there's bridge strikes have been becoming more and more common, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. And we go, okay, what happens if the bridge gets taken out? First, over 150,000 additional tractor trailers will be on I-95 every year, or while that bridge is out. Or maybe it's every month. It might be every month.
Wow,
It's probably every month.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so that is a huge issue. Not only that, you have no idea what kind of restrictions to maritime traffic would be during an emergency reconstruction of the bridge. When the bridge was struck last time, the bridge was down for, I think, 5 days while it was being inspected and repaired. So, and I understand that repair cost over $1 million.
Wow.
So it's imperative that we shore up that infrastructure for our maritime community. But not it's the railroad bridge actually benefits more than just the maritime community. The maritime community is in one way is one of the biggest benefactors from the fact that they're looking at, I was told, as much as 92% of the boats will be able to go under the bridge without it having to be risen, which is great. But I take it more conservative and just say, okay, what if it's 85%? It's like 3% now. So,
okay, all right.
So
Good.
virtually none,
Good.
Effectively none. So the second thing is, because of the economic implications of Indiantown, that there's a lot of if the bridge is down and has to be in a locked position for a repair or something, that creates a problem. The second thing is traffic. If all of that freight, and forget about the passenger rail. Passenger rail isn't going to affect us per se at this point, but if you add another 100, if it's 150,000 cars a month on
95 or
on
the
95
turnpike
or the turnpike, think about the potential for additional accidents, the damage to the roads because of all of those heavy trucks. Because remember, what the crane's carrying is some of the heaviest. Those sand trains and gravel trains are so heavy that if you start putting those and filling trucks up, they're going to be going at maximum gross weight, which will cause more damage to the road. So there is the potential for plus delays, supply chain delays, just in time. All of the manufacturing all gets delayed because of that. So it's urgent and critical. It's becoming critical that we actually replace this 120 or 100, no, I guess it's a 100-year-old bridge. I used to think we need to replace it solely because of Brightline. After what I've recently learned, it's much more than that. So
we have you just mentioned $130 million grant. Do you know the total cost of the bridge?
They're saying $218 million.
And do you know a timeline on when it will be started and completed?
Not exactly,
Okay.
but it's 4 years of construction. It just depends on how much environmental review they have to do in permitting. So it's like 3.5 years of construction. So it depends on whether they have to do what level of environmental review they have to do, because there's already an existing bridge. So do they have to do a full environmental review? Then there's, of course, Coast Guard it has to be permitted by the Army Corps of Engineers, the Coast Guard, DEP. So there's a lot of permitting that goes into this, and engineering. The engineering is, when you think about, you're going to put potentially. The engineering, again, isn't really for the Brightline trains. It's for the freight trains, because the freight trains have to have a grade where they can get over it.
Right.
And they have to be able to hold the weight, double tracked of 2 fully loaded trains. And there's no room for error.
Now, the city's, is it giving land or selling land, or is it already in the easement for them? Because right now,
there is a piece of land we have to work with on the city.
Okay.
There's a one little one, I think, south of the bridge, and a little bit larger one north of the bridge. And we haven't actually gotten that far, but the land's there, not being used, and so we'll deal with that as we go.
and the city owns that already,
Yeah.
so you have that ability. Okay, so and then let's just move right on to the station as well.
Okay.
That is something that the city has, in conjunction with the county, agreed to have a Brightline station here on the Treasure Coast that was chosen by Brightline. The city is providing $30 million, right?
Up to, I think it'll be less than that, but yes. So the city of Stuart has agreed to build the parking garage. And for me, this is a double win because we're potentially going to get some benefit from the train. But I've been trying to build a parking garage in downtown for 15 years. So we're finally going to be able to get that parking structure that we're going to get. And under the plan is we'll build the parking structure, and then Brightline will operate it at their expense. So they will do the operations and maintenance of the parking structure.
Where's the grant structure? I know that's how the city wants to pay for the for the station. Is that
We're going to apply for grants. The timeline's a little bit. The timeline's too aggressive to apply in advance, so we're going to be applying retroactively. But we have the funding through our TIF funding, which is our CRA. In fact, our CRA this year is close to $6 million in TIF funding. That is not new taxes. That's existing taxes that have to be spent within the CRA of the city of Stuart on infrastructure. Almost not completely, but mostly on infrastructure.
is there a possibility that a grant doesn't come through?
There is a possibility.
So there'll be 100%.
I'm taking the position that we probably won't get one, but we'll work and then hope for the best, because I don't want people to think that we're saying, oh yeah, we're definitely going to get one. But again, like I said, we're getting the win-win of the parking structure that we've been, at least certainly I've been wanting, and our downtown community's been wanting for quite some time.
And I have to ask about the location of it, because one thing we've talked about, you and I, a lot, is the Sailfish Circle parking. A lot
Right.
of times there's parking there, but people don't want to walk that far. Is there going to be constant trams running from the parking garage to downtown, or?
Yeah, we run trams pretty much continuously now. We've expanded our tram fleet to 4 or 5. And as far as the location goes, interestingly enough, when you go back and you look at our comprehensive plan, in the mid 90s, the city had put in our comp plan desire to have the return of passenger rail, and actually identified that location as the station.
Okay.
And so so that has been kind of, I guess, where the city's been thinking actually about the time I came to Stuart, was when it was put in our comp plan. So we are seeing that it's kind of lining with everything's lining up with our comp plan. And I think I mentioned this the last time I was on the show with you. I'd come across an article that was written from 2014 when I was 2013, 2014. I think it was 2014 when I was mayor the first time, and it was about the Brightline, and it was I would raise, as you know, I was one of the first elected officials in Martin County to raise concerns about the Brightline, and it was all aboard Florida at the time.
That's right.
And the issues were there was 3 issues that the city of Stuart was raising. One was the lack of a station, so therefore we get no benefit for having come through. One is issues involving individual intersections and traffic and what type of delays and safety issues. And then finally it was the bridge. And the bridge is multifaceted in its issues. And I look back, in fact, the leadership of Brightline, I invited to Stuart one time, and I think I probably told you about this, and you recall. I invited them to come and have lunch with me, and they thought we were going to walk across the street to a restaurant. I walked them out to the dock, and we jumped on our police boat, and I took them through the bridge over to Sailor's Return. And as we went through, I had our police officer who captained the boat explain the issues with the bridge, and we actually were out there right in, under the bridge. Basically.
When you have a captive audience, so you're not going to
exactly.
jump off the boat.
By the way, they were very surprised. They're all in their suits
Right.
and ties and everything, and they were not in boat shoes and stuff. But it did give them an opportunity. So skipping ahead, we're getting the station. which is one of the issues. We've in the last several years, since Martin County settled the lawsuit, it's formed as far as a much better working relationship with not only Brightline but FECR regarding the intersection improvements. In fact, one of our intersections at Florida Street, after they finished it, and this was before the train started running, we got a bunch of concerns from our community. We went back and looked at it. We agreed. We went to Brightline, and they redesigned and rebuilt the intersection. 10 years ago, I never thought something like that would happen. We're right now working with our engineers and ultimately with the Brightline and FECR.
Are they paying for that?
They paid for that one.
Okay.
We are probably going to do some things at Confusion Corner that we're going to pay for, because it's not necessarily in the intersection, but it's affected by the intersection.
Okay.
So, Confusion Corner is such a challenge because I don't know of another intersection, and I've asked the railroad people if they can tell me another one like it, where you have a traffic circle with multiple exits in inbound and outbound roads. You have two double-track railroad track, and you have something that's very unusual, which is a left turn that avoids it, and the cars in the circle don't have the right-of-way, which is also unusual. Usually the cars in the circles have the right-of-way, but they don't.
It's earned its name, Confusion
Corners. It has earned its name, Confusion Corners. So we are looking at some redesigns. Our staff and engineers come up with a few things. We've been working on getting the grant funding from through the TAP grant, because it's really directed at pedestrian safety, a little bit on the car safety. We're also trying to get what we're trying to do is get it to score high enough for quiet zones as well, because the way
that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, so because quiet zones, first the county has to apply for them, and it falls right into this discussion, but they're not based on individual intersections. It's on like sections of track. So in order for us to get quiet zones on Fern, we have to qualify for one on Confusion Corner, kind of. So even though it's a mile on the other side of the bridge.
Right.
So we have to work on all these intersections to figure out how to get the score up, especially one as difficult as Confusion Corner. And I've seen the plans for it, and I have for the initial plans that our engineers came up with and the Regional Planning Council came up with. I have a lot of questions about it because it's having to make some changes. I'm not gonna prejudge it because I haven't even had a chance to discuss it with our staff. But I think it's important that we start having this conversation and we decide what are must-have changes and what aren't. What is there something we can't live with if we change it, and what can we live with? And once we get that, can we score high enough for the quiet zones?
Perfect.
So it's it is. Then finally, just on the last part of that, as far as that going back to that article, was the bridge. And I sit there and I said I spent a lot of time this last few days working on the bridge and working to move it forward, meeting with the Coast Guard, meeting with Senator's staff, meeting with Brian Mast and his staff, and meeting with FECR, meeting with Brightline. All of these things, because Brightline and FECR are two separate companies, and
right.
so you have to, so we're trying to, everybody's trying to work towards the same goal, but everybody has slightly different objectives. So
right, that's very true, and you're right. Brightline FECR is actually owned by Grupo Mexico now,
right?
So very interesting. But let's move on. We spent a lot of time on the bridge, more than I anticipated, but very good information because it is incredibly important locally as well as out in Indiantown, everybody west of the bridge, honestly. Troy, your opponent was on here, Sean Reed, and talked about specifically a aquatic plant killer that was, you agreed was a safe type of herbicide, and he contested that.
He says it's not. So kind of goes back. The city had been using this herbicide for years for our drainage ponds. Now these are ponds that are being drained that were dug to be road drainage. So they're stormwater treatment areas that were created for road runoff.
Okay.
Okay,
Right.
storage and runoff. In fact, Poppleton Creek was one that we had a long discussion on recently. 15, 16 years ago was nothing but it was just a field. Now it is a stormwater treatment area that protects Poppleton Creek and the St. Lucie River, but it also is the drainage for these for the roads in some communities, and that's what these ponds all over the city are. They're where the water goes when it drains. Unfortunately, there's these exotic weeds that get into these ponds, and they grow very fast, and they clog up the control structures. When the control structures get clogged up, they cause flooding. So we have to, when Merritt Matheson and Mike Meyer came on the board, they wanted us to switch to a different type of bio-friendly type chemical, basically a salt. And so they went to that. It didn't work. So we started looking at other ways to control it, and it was mechanical means of removal. And my opponent says that we did it to save $1. No, we did it to save about $800,000 a year. Is the cost of mechanical removal from all of our ponds. Now these ponds do not, they're not flowing directly into the river. They're not going into our water supply, most important. And when he talks about chemicals, he's talking about if you drink it straight. These are diluted very heavily and used. We only use, I think, and I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it's $6,000 a year for all of our herbicide needs in the city of Stuart. But because we wanted to make sure, because we did have a concern about this, we hired an expert, actually, and this goes back to when Merritt Matheson was still under commission, to come in and look at doing pilot programs. And this was an expert on coming up with turning our stormwater plants basically into a functioning wetland while still meeting the goals of of what a storm drainage pond does.
Okay.
And so we had him do a report and come up with a pilot program. And the first thing he said, and this is the person at Merritt who did not want to spray any chemicals at all, said, we have to spray. Okay. But he also has told us what we can do to eliminate our spray as we kill the bad weeds. We need to replace them with the good plants that will not overgrow and will work as filtration and will not grow out of control and clog up those control structures. The other thing he actually said, and this kind of contradictory to what my opponent said, we actually have a problem with too many fish. The exotic fish are doing so well that he said we need to actually fish them out.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so,
right.
And he actually suggested even that we could actually, and I don't know if we'll ever get to this point in the near future, but suggested we could, once we got rid of the exotic fish, which I think would be very difficult because I don't know, they spawn so fast, but we have tilapia and carp and other kinds of fish.
Do you allow the public to fish out of any of them? Or?
As far as I know, I think I've seen people fishing at Poppleton Creek before.
Okay.
And I actually brought the report, and it says the results, the original hypothesis that chemical spraying could be eliminated at the lake was rejected. Chemical spraying is needed to control aquatic weeds, but selective application limited to nuisance plants and spring expanding native plants will reduce the amount of herbicide application. So that's what we're doing too. And this is from the report from the expert, brought in by the person that was found and had us found and asked to come in and talk about and do this study for us as a pilot program. So we take this very seriously. The city of Stuart has spent tens of millions of dollars protecting the river. We were the first municipality to have a fertilizer ordinance. We've spent $25 million on stormwater treatment, and 2013 when the Basin Management Action Plan to reduce the loads of phosphorus and nitrogen, which was into our rivers. It was like a 10-year plan. We had to complete it in 2 years from DEP. Purchased Haney Creek, Poppleton Creek, we've done that project. We have, in partnership with the county, north of the heart of Haney Creek, we have the Haney Creek Park where the dog park is and nature trails, but we have preserve land that goes almost all the way up to Jensen Beach Boulevard. That's all in the city, owned in partnership with Martin County. That's all restored wetlands. In the Costco development, we actually required the Costco development to put in a next generation stormwater system where we had them before they could start construction. They had to test the water to get a baseline of the pollution, and then so we have a benchmark. And then the filtration system that they put in. So not only are we requiring to store stormwater, which we always do, there was several non-functioning man-made wet areas that were not delineated as wetlands, but we'll call them wetlands.
Okay.
So we had them restore the same amount of water. Plus, in addition to that, even though they are going to have that same amount of water on site, we required them to buy 13 acres worth of credits at the wetland mitigation bank. So, but we required them, and this is probably the key thing, before any excess water gets discharged from the site, it has to go through a special baffle box. Now, we've always, on these projects, we've required baffle boxes. We have baffle boxes all over the city. But in a baffle box is a large concrete box that water comes in and has baffles. So it basically, it causes a solid material to fall to the bottom. And that way it doesn't get discharged. And the solid material can then be sucked out with a vacuum truck. And that's where a lot of your pollutants are, but not all your pollutants. Some of them are in the water. So the new next generation actually has like a filtration system in it, a resin filtration system in it. And this is very simplified. This is how it's kind of like what you have in your fish tank. So, and it will filter out that additional pollutants, your phosphorus, nitrogen, and other pollutants. So,
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So. That I think that baffle box was like $500,000 that we required them to put in.
Okay.
I mean, so when you sit there and try to sit there and say that we're not concerned about the river because we have done a little bit of spraying, it's actually by ensuring that we don't flood and have water sheet flow because of flooding into the river, we're actually doing more to protect the river. Would I like to get to a point where we don't spray any chemicals? Absolutely. But I can also tell you that I don't think my residents would be happy if I raised the millage rate a half a mil, so we could to do mechanical removal plants.
Just a general question I like to ask everybody. In your view, what is the proper role, size, and scope of government? And that comes from a listener.
What is the question again?
What is the proper role, size, and scope of government?
Well, I think it depends on which government you're talking about. You know,
yours.
So in local government, you know, it is enough to provide the services that the community not only needs but wants and desires as a whole. One of the things that I think is actually good about the city of Stuart, from a perspective, is that our commissioners don't have offices and assistants. So we're not there, you know, and in governments where they have offices and assistants, they spend a lot of time meddling into the day-to-day operations where they have don't even have an understanding of some of the procedural aspects of things. But, you know, our job is to keep our job as our number one job as a elected official, as a city commissioner, is to pass a tax rate and a budget. And one of the things I'm very happy about, since I returned to the commission in 2020, we have not raised taxes. We're not going to raise. In fact, we set our maximum not to exceed millage rate at our last meeting, which is the same millage rate as last year. So, and then going back, if you look at the millage rate at the city of Stuart, I think it was in 2005, we were over 5.2 mils. We're at 5 mils now. And if it wasn't for the recession and the complete nosedive of property values, we probably would be lower than 5 now, but we got to the point that after not raising taxes through most of the recession, the property values kept falling and falling and falling, and we got several unfunded mandates from the state that were in the $1 million plus mark that we did have to finally have small incremental increases, but we've kept it at 5 for the last, so 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 3, and now 4. So I think that's one of the things that's really important, that we are looking at responsible government. And by the way, while we're doing that, we're keeping it at 5 mills, and we're adding police and fire. We're opening up a new fire station, so we're adding the fire stations to staff fires to staff that. We are looking at policing a little bit different. And we were actually, one of the things last year, we added additional officers because we needed to make sure that we were watching out for the mental health of our police officers, and we're looking at that this year. So we're looking at adding some officers this year. So we're adding these things. We're continuing to do the great projects of running our downtown. The river walk. We have more access to the St. Lucie River, or probably water, than almost probably any city our size in the state.
Right, I agree.
Absolutely. And all of that is open to not just our residents, but anyone that comes to our community, whether they're from Palm City, Hope Sound, or Port St. Lucie. And it's also one of the reasons why we are the economic driver for the Treasure Coast. It's not, I hate to say it, but it's not Port St. Lucie, it's us.
Right.
And so we are the economic driver. We're our maritime, our aerospace, is just to name a couple of the industries that we have.
What is your approach for transparency in government? And before you answer that, the county has an email system that's absolutely fantastic. I'm sure you know about it, where the county commissioners and the county administrator, which is like your city manager, their emails that come in are public. The public can access them at any point. Would you be supportive of introducing a system like that for the city in hopes of more transparency?
Yeah, I have no problem with that. But when we talk about transparency, we've recently switched to this OpenGov system, and I think we're trending that way as it is. What we've done is we've made everything about our financials available. You can go and see our checkbook registry.
Fantastic.
You can see, you can go and see like every expenditure that's made. You can get lost in it. There's so much information.
Sure.
And so we've done that. We're also doing that. We're upgrading our permitting system. We're upgrading all of these systems. One of the things, and I have not spoken to our IT people, but I know with our email, our IT people are, they're very difficult to deal with, because the city, there was in 2019 when I was not in office, the city had a very serious ransomware hack, and so we take cybersecurity very aggressively. And one of the things that with that cybersecurity is you won't see our email addresses actually published anywhere, and so our IT people may have an issue with it. I don't know. I've never spoken with them. I have no problem with it, but we also the city was very lucky that one of our IT people happened to be working on a Saturday and saw the hack happening and unplugged the city.
Wow.
The way I understand, again, I wasn't in the office at the time, but my understanding, there was a IT guy in changing out a server in the police department. He saw all the extensions being changed on one of the servers, realized what was happening, and shut down the whole system.
Wow.
When only like one or two of the servers had been affected.
Thank goodness.
And if not, we might not have been able to recover that without paying a ransom. And none of us want to pay a ransom. In fact, I think the state actually made it illegal for us to pay a ransom now. So there is a cybersecurity issue. If there's no issue with that, I have no problem with it. So
okay, thank you. I just think it's a great idea. It's a wonderful transparency aspect. I have to ask you about this, Troy. This is probably one of the biggest issues this year for the campaign, and that is the growth, the buildings, the apartments, and traffic?
Yeah. Well, all great questions. So, which one do you want to take first? You want me to just kind of tackle it?
Well, they kind of go hand in hand, in my opinion.
So, let me just start with growth. So, growth. First of all, city's had its fair share of growth, and I've voted for a lot of projects. The considerable amount of the apartments that were approved when I was not in office, and the ones I have voted on were actually in the pipeline. I always tell people, and they ask me, would you have voted for them? I say, I can say no, it's going to be disingenuous. Just assume I would have. I don't know if I would have or not, but just assume
they're here.
They're there, and just assume that I would have voted
back.
for them. Yeah, right. And I wasn't there. I couldn't vote on them. But,
right.
So I don't know the details but what we are seeing is the city is trending down. We have not approved a residential project in over a year and a half. We have approved one commercial project, which is a hotel, which I'm sure you're going to ask me about.
Yes, we just talked about it in the previous hour.
Which I look forward to talking about that. We did, but transportation and traffic, I think, is the big issue. And one of the things is I'm chairman of the Martin County MPO, which is the transportation and traffic side of planning in our community. So I'm very familiar with traffic. And though you have to remember 60,000 cars a day come over the Roosevelt Bridge from Port St. Lucie every day. Another 10,000, 9,000, 10,000 come down Green River Parkway. Those are just two routes into Stuart. You also have traffic coming through Palm City every day. And you have traffic coming from the south, but not as much. So one of the things that I have been working on as the MPO chair is how do we alleviate traffic? And I'll just kind of start with, because traffic is a regional issue. You can't look at it in a box. You can't look at it and say, okay, here's the city of Stuart. I was out actually very late for me last night, 9:30. And I was going down Osceola Street, and there wasn't a car on Osceola Street on a Tuesday night at 9:30, and downtown was empty. On a Sunday afternoon, there's no traffic issue in the city of Stuart, and that's important to recognize because that's when the folks that from St. Lucie County are not here working. I was told by George Stokas at the county, I think 80% of the county employees live in St. Lucie County. I'm not sure ours, but I know at least half of ours live in St. Lucie County. In the hospital and so forth. But here's what we're doing for traffic. So starting at the St. Lucie County line and moving south from the US 1 to Joan Jefferson, which is at the south end of the new Roosevelt Bridge, we're doing a traffic congestion management study. And what that is looking for ways to reduce traffic along that route through and it may be anything from interconnected parking lots. So if you're at the mall and you want to go to Target, can you get to Target? There's interconnections of connectivity of neighborhoods in some of those neighborhoods getting to facilities along the route without actually going on the route. Again, 60,000 cars every day from down US 1 that aren't stopping. And so then getting to what we have as approved projects, now that's underway, that study's going on. There's actually, if you go to the Martin County MPO website, there's a survey you can take to participate to help with that. And we'd love to have you do that and get all the data that we can. Then when you get to Baker Road, we got $1.8 million redesign that's funded for construction, I think in 2 years. That is a complete redesign of that for both traffic, pedestrian safety, and to move more traffic. Further south, get to Joan Jefferson, which is the road that you turn in to go downtown Stuart. Every day, 24,000 cars peel off of US 1 into downtown. So we are redesigning another almost $2 million that's funded for construction and scheduled for, I think, next year to redo that intersection. And these jobs, the reason they're so expensive, they have to replace mast arms and all of these things. And it's to move more traffic and also pedestrian and bicycle safety. We found when we did a study on traffic fatalities and accidents, the bottom of the bridges is where the biggest hotspots are. So that's right at the bottom of a bridge. We want to make that safer. Skipping ahead, there's another 12,000 cars a day cut through Palm City Road over to Palm City. So we're working on, or we've actually came up with a plan of a redesign of that intersection to try to alleviate some of that traffic on Palm City Road. That is not funded for construction yet. That's not even in design yet, but we've started the process. Going to US 1 and Canner Highway, the busiest intersection in the county. 40,000 cars go through that intersection on their way to the highway from Port St. Lucie every day. And that intersection has an $8.8 million funded for construction for 28 to redo the intersection, to add a dedicated right-hand turn lane to move more cars going to the south on Canner Highway, and then adding a third turn lane going north so all those cars can make that turn and get more traffic moving through moving through that intersection, so they're not stacking up and creating safety issues. They have to take, the state is coming in, they have to take some right away, redesign the mast arms. It's very expensive. Moving even further south, we are in the environmental impact study for the Willoughby Road extension, extending Willoughby from Monterey to US 1. And then we are looking at a grade separation, and we are in the what they call PD&E, which is it's basically an impact, like an environmental impact study for grade separation of Monterey Road at Dixie Highway and the railroad track. So when you get on Monterey Road at US 1, you'll be able to go all the way to East Ocean without a traffic light or a train track to stop for. That's about a $60 to $70 million project, and it's several years down the way, but we're in the initial planning stages, and it's one of the top priorities for the Martin MPO.
Couple things here. Something that struck me is all the workers in Martin County that live in St. Lucie County. It's a lot of the traffic. Certainly that would lead to our affordable housing issues here. I know the city of Stuart cannot solve all that, but that's really a huge indicator of it. I'm sure they'd prefer to live here.
Well, and that was why, in all fairness to the city commission that approved the apartments, they did a study that was done in like 2018 that came out that said that how many workers come into Stuart and Martin County every day, and there was a lack of housing. And so they held several workshops on it, and the workshops were filled with the peers of the especially we had a couple younger commissioners saying we need more housing. Mm-hmm. And that's what led to the approval of the apartments. I've recently been in a couple of those apartments and talked to several of the tenants, and one apartment complex I went in to meet with one person and ended up seeing 3 people I knew that lived there from the local area. I talked to a county commission candidate who has 3 kids living in an apartment complex because their children can't afford an apartment. So when we talk about like the workforce housing and affordability, it's what is affordable is a moving target. But here's what I can say. In Martin County, the median price of a single family home is well over $600,000. So let's just use $600,000. If you're fortunate enough to put 20% down and have a $120,000 down payment, plus all your closing costs, and you only have to borrow $480,000, your mortgage, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance will be somewhere between $5,500 and $6,000 a month. All of a sudden now that $2,200 2-bedroom, 2-bath brand new apartment is looking a lot more affordable.
Right.
And that is an issue. And what I've found is that the apartments, that there are people that don't like them. Here's another thing I found. I had someone recently suggest to me that they don't pay their fair share. And I thought, I thought about that. So I pulled up one of the apartment complex's tax rolls, one of the newer ones, and the apartment complex pays $1,030,000 a year. I figured out that it was roughly $3,800 per unit per year. So each apartment dweller is paying close to $4,000 a year in taxes. I don't pay for that much on my single family.
Yeah, that's always passed in through rent, so that's kind of
Yeah.
a shallow
Yeah.
argument.
I also found out, then I talked to an apartment manager and found out their insurance policy is over $1 million a year. So there's another $4,000 that goes to each unit
Right.
pays towards insurance. So
it's not it gets passed on. It's not as inexpensive. They
right.
do have
And
skin in the game.
And that also leads to the affordability issue.
Right.
And that's why it's so important for everybody to be involved in our community, understand what we're doing, and get out and vote, for example.
Real quick question here. You sit on the MPO. You said you're the chair. Sewell's Point has a representative. Indiantown has a representative. Obviously, Stuart does. Martin County does. One of the biggest contributors to the county budget is Jupiter Island. They do not have some representation on the MPO. Would you support that?
We're going to take it up. We have to look at it. It's really a population thing. So I don't see any problem with it. We need to be careful so that we don't get it becomes too unwieldy. We're already up to 9 members now, so that creates a problem. Actually, I met with Jupiter Island folks, and I was at their meeting where they asked about it, and I had it put on the agenda. I think we're having a discussion on it next month. But there are some requirements from the state regarding population size as well, I believe.
All right, let's talk about that hotel on Colorado Avenue.
So, first of all, it's a hotel. I voted for it, and I'm glad I did. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you why. It met the code. And there's people saying it didn't, but it does. It does not exceed the maximum height. It is 45 feet tall to the eaves, which is the city of Stuart's height limit. We do allow what they call a parapet. And a parapet, for those who don't know, is a 2.5-foot high wall that goes on the edge of the building to hide equipment, whether it's air conditioners or maybe an elevator shaft or something like that. Under our code, we allow 40% of the linear or portion of the building to have a parapet. The developer came in and wanted an exception to add 8% or 13 feet so that the property owners behind the hotel would be shielded from the air conditioning equipment. The next exception was there was a requirement, if you're familiar with the entrance, across the street there's a shopping plaza that has like Fruits and Roots and so forth. Mm-hmm. And there was a requirement to put a sidewalk that went along the parking lot there that sidewalk would go to nowhere, but it would also require the developer to remove either 5 or 6 mature oak trees. And we eliminated the sidewalk so those mature oak trees didn't have to be taken down. We like trees more than we like sidewalks.
Right.
So
thank goodness.
Now, then with the parking, there was a shared parking agreement that had been in place for many years. That property is part of the Royal Palm Financial Center. It was sold off in a bankruptcy, actually. From what I understand, it was split off, but it was actually still part of that development. And that parking garage was built to support this piece of property, and they had a shared agreement. There was more than adequate parking. Our comp plan actually says, whenever possible, use shared parking. And it was within our code that requires that the shared parking be within 500 feet of the property. All of those conditions were met, so therefore, it met the requirements. Not just less than a year prior to the vote on that project, that development, we redid our Creek District code to form-based code, which passed unanimously. In that code, we actually contemplated that spot as a hotel and made sure that the code met the requirements that what a hotel would need, because that had been identified as a hotel location.
What do you say to the folks that said, yes, okay, it's a hotel, but it's a flagged hotel where everything in Stuart is kind of like a mom and pop boutique type stores and shops? So now you've got a
we live in a capital market
hotel
that drives, and we cannot make a decision solely based on what the brand is. And by the way, it could be a Hilton this week, and a year later it'd be a Marriott. I mean, we can't sit there and go, oh, sorry, you're not this brand anymore. you have to tear your building down. So, and in a capital market, in a free marketplace, that's what's going to dictate it. I would love to have some, a Waldorf Astoria there. I don't see Waldorf Astoria knocking down our doors to build a hotel in our location. And the market will drive the rates. And I know I've heard people say, well, it's a discount rate. I don't know if it is. I've never actually stayed in a True. But I do know that the Hamilton Inn, Hamilton Inn or whatever it is,
Hampton.
north of the bridge, Hampton, I was trying to put somebody up there one time during season, and that's a discount chain, and it was $450 a night.
Wow.
So when supply and demand is going to drive the price. And so I've actually spoken with the hotel folks, and they said when they talked about the night, because you can go up on a True and find rooms for like $100 a night, and the developer told me that if he only got $100 a night, he'd be bankrupt the first year. He actually has to do $175 a night as his average rate. So it's not as cheap as what people are making it out to be. So.
Donations. Can you provide transparency on how your campaign funds are sourced and how you ensure that donor contributions do not unduly influence your policy positions or decisions?
So the vast majority of my contributions are coming from local residents and business owners. There are contributions that I have not taken. I've turned down contributions this year, several. I'm not going to get into who they are because I don't want to embarrass anybody. But our contributions are transparent from a perspective is that every week right now we're down to a point where we're doing weekly filings, and it says who they are, and you can look. People are very capable as we know, to Google people's names. But if you look at my contributions, and I've had a very successful year this year from a fundraising perspective, I have no problem with anybody I'm taking, and if far as an influence. I have contributions coming from people that have conflicting, contributors or have conflicting goals. So, and I'm not going to sell my soul out for $100 or even $1,000 contribution. So, and any politician that does shouldn't be in office.
So again, we've been speaking with Troy McDonald. He is being challenged by Sean Reed for the City of Stuart Commission. Troy has been in office since 2011 with one short sabbatical in this time frame. My last question for you, Troy, as we close out this hour, it went by very fast.
I know, I can't believe
thank you for the information. I know.
I was like, wow, it's 11 o'clock already.
I know, it goes by very quickly. But why should voters cast their ballot for you?
Well, leadership, experience, and results. The city of Stuart was recently voted by USA Today as the best small downtown. Small coastal downtown. As far as results go, a very stable, transparent tax rate. While other governments have been raising taxes, we're not. So we're keeping our tax rate stable. Even TC Palm gave us an A rating, far as, and they haven't been doing that much with local government lately. And so, look around. We've got just what we've accomplished this year: new fire station, new $40 million reverse osmosis drinking water plant, the mega grant for the bridge, the Brightline station. And so we are really I'm a results-driven person, and that's what I'm looking for. And I ask for everybody's vote on Election Day.
That's August 20th, folks. Make sure you get out there and vote. Troy McDonald, thank you so much for joining me in the studio once again. Very informative.